This is going to be my preview for the Ravens-Bengals Week 18 matchup in Cincinnati. Of course, Cincinnati has clinched the AFC North title. And really, to be honest with you, this preview is going to be a little bit speculative on my part from the standpoint of assuming that the teams are going to play each other twice, because it certainly looks like there's a pretty high probability that they will. Were the Ravens to go in there and upset the Bengals, that would clearly, possibly change that with the coin flip, possibility. But the line on this game has moved significantly as I record this, so Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So it appears as if most people understand what Sunday's going to be. But nonetheless, I'm going to do my due diligence. And to be honest with you, a lot of this preview is going to be previewing this as a doubleheader. And so some may say, well, Coach, some of the things you're going to talk about aren't really pertinent to the Week 18 matchup. Lamar not playing, hell, Huntley's been injured, Deshaun Jackson's sick. Maybe the Ravens rest a bunch of defensive starters in preparation for the rematch. That's entirely possible. This preview is taking that into account, and I am, to be honest with you, not going to conduct a second preview if these teams play again in the first round of the playoffs in the wild card. So having said that, look, there's just so many unknowns. That's why I'm going to operate from that standpoint. That's why I'm going to project this as if there's going to be two games played in a row, because there's so many questions. Will Huntley even play? What's the status of his shoulder injury like? With all the limitations of the offense already, Bateman out, so many guys have missed time. Lamar's now missed a lot of time being out. Has there been more limitations on the offense because of Huntley's injury lately? It's an interesting question. When you look back at some of the play calls. Will Deshaun Jackson play? He's been sick. Will Gus Edwards finally get snaps? Do the Ravens even plan on playing all of those guys? Who knows, really? Personally, for my channel, too much speculation on those things or commenting on the coin flip possibility and decision, that's not my area of expertise, for real. I have a little bit of notes drawn up, so, forgive me if you hear me flipping in the background some. I wouldn't want you to really come to this channel and care what I think about the NFL's decision and all of those things, because frankly, I don't think about those things. I focus on the film to the best of my ability, and I try to evaluate it after the game and then give you guys hopefully somewhat succinct or, sometimes long-form content that talks about the play calls, the decisions, the patterns, and the techniques that the players executed. Before the game, I try to show you film that I think could be predictive, maybe. Situations the Ravens can take advantage of, or their opponent can take advantage of. Situations the Ravens might struggle with. Things that have or are causing issues for other teams. And look, active players not taken into consideration here for Week 18. I'm talking about Week 18 and the wild card rematch, presuming that. There are things the Ravens can do in this matchup. There are, even without Rashad Bateman. Will it happen in Week 18, or in the wild card game, or in both of those games, or neither one of them? I'm not sure. I mean, of course, this Sunday, if Anthony Brown starts and there's a bunch of veteran defensive players rested, probably won't. I'm going to point these things out to you because I have to, based on my observation, the study and analysis that I have attempted to do all season, and now for the better part of 2 seasons for the Ravens. Personally, I hope I'm back to full strength. I was ill twice, and hopefully I can go over all 3 elements of the Ravens-Bengals game or games that I think are important or that I'm going to choose to focus on. Watch all Ravens content creators, for real. That would be my recommendation for you, is watch all of them, because we all hopefully together, provide, a preview and or analysis of the games that has a lot of width and then hopefully a lot of depth. Hopefully everybody's not hitting on the same topics. I chose my 3, based upon the way I see the game and the patterns that I think I see over the course of the season, giving the Ravens problems or things the Ravens can do. So here's the 3 things I'm going to focus on, and then we'll get started. First is the Bengals defense. It's one of the best in the league, especially in the second half. They're very smart, physical, and versatile. However, and look, I've pointed out on this channel a lot, probably annoying some of you guys as Ravens fans, how highly I think of the Bengals defense and the way it's coordinated and how smart their players are. But they've been somewhat inconsistent lately, for real, despite the 7-game win streak. I hope to show some film and convince you of that here in a moment. The second thing we'll talk about is the Ravens defense and how reliant they were on the Tampa 2 zone in the Week 5 win 1917 over the Bengals, and how that formula might not be so easy to replicate in Week 18 and or the wildcard game, although teams are still using it. And I'll show you examples of the Patriots doing so in Week 16. All right, the third part will be the Bengals' offensive look, really focusing on their Week 16 win over the Patriots and some of the things that they are doing that I think are reactive to the too high cover 2 Tampa 2 looks that teams gave them so much earlier in the season. What I mean is, when I say reactive, is plays that they are running to put those defenses in conflict and try to get them out of those looks. See, I think the Bengals offense wants you to play man free, and they want you to play cover 3. They want you to play coverages that isolate your corners, your outside corners, on Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, from the bottom of the numbers to the sideline. And when I say they want, what I mean is that's where they get their biggest plays. Is that what they want on every play? No, I think they want to be a balanced offense. But to win games decisively, to make their big plays, generally, it seems like they rely on coverages that are man-free, cover 3, maybe some split field coverages as well, where corners can be isolated on those guys from the bottom of the numbers, top of the numbers, to the sideline. The outer thirds of the field, I guess you'll say, even though that really doesn't work in terms of math. So we're going to start, and I do have significant notes here, and a lot of this is going to be commentary while the film shows. We're going to start by talking about the Bengals defense. Look, it's one of the best in the league. I've covered that and probably disappointed a lot of you guys for stating it so directly and so often, and doing videos last playoffs when the Ravens were out on the Bengals, because I thought that I recognized traits in their defense that could translate and travel in the playoffs, and sure enough, it did. They shut down everybody in the AFC playoffs in the second half. It's been interesting, though. That's not been the case in this 7-game win streak. They're very smart, physical, multiple, but I think they've been inconsistent during this 7-game win streak. Let's look at the film from 4 games. Here's the first one. This is Week 11 against the Steelers. Steelers took a 20-17 lead into halftime, all right? They scored on 4 of their 5 possessions in the first half. Field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal. The data, the stats. 35 plays. And that right there, by the way, is a concept that gives this Bengals defense trouble in some of the coverages they play. Whether it's a 1-high safety structure, here they are playing this 3-deep, 2-under stuff that they play a lot more often than I feel like I see other teams playing. The over or the Yankee concept, where you get a deep crosser or a deep clear-out route from one side, and then from the other side, you get an athletic, fast receiver running the deep over. The Ravens have run this against the Bengals. They did it in 2021 in Week 7. Multiple teams have run it against them repeatedly last year and this year, whether it's against their split field coverage looks or their 1-high safety looks, and it works. But in any case, that's first half. Steelers, 35 plays, 213 yards, 6.1 yards per play, a little under 6.1, I think like 6.08, 6.09. And the Bengals came back to win. All right, don't get me wrong. They won 37-30, 37-32, 37-30. So you had, a convincing win on the road, because when I say convincing, that last touchdown by the Steelers in the second half, it was pretty much, a garbage touchdown. I mean, they closed to 37-30. But my point that I want to make here is multiple guys are making plays for the Steelers offense. You saw the deep reception by George Pickens. Freiermuth had catches in this game. Deontay Johnson. This is all first half film. Najee Harris made plays. Multiple guys were making plays against this defense. It's not like, I use basketball comparisons a lot. It's not like the Steelers just had one guy, a 6'6" shooting guard or small forward that they kept running pick and roll for, and the Bengals couldn't guard him. It's not like they just had a hammer of a running back and they ran for 8 yards per carry in one half when the Bengals kind of were ceding yards for whatever reason. That's not what happened here. Everyone was making plays in this first half. Everyone for Kenny Pickett, on a zone read there, keeping it around the edge. it says a lot about the Bengals that they were able to come out and then blow the Steelers away, or I should say, move past them quite easily in the second half on the road, right? 20-17 at the half. Scored on 4 or 5 possessions, and then the Bengals, eventually go ahead 37-23, I think, win 37-30. So says a lot about them. But again, the point is you're not getting. Well, this follows the Bengals pattern, right, of being dominant in the second half, while I don't think the first half play here fits to their standard, and they've had injury problems. DJ Reader missed time. Awuzie is out for the year. I think Mike Hilton missed a game, and that's how Dax Hill was able to play a lot, I think, against Tampa Bay on the road. And you'll see some film of that later. So injuries have been an issue for the Bengals, don't get me wrong, just like they have for everybody else. But still, I have noticed a pattern whereby you're getting one really dominant half out of them and one that is not. Now, in this case, it follows the pattern, where the first half is the team that can score, very similar to the Bucs game that you'll see later. And then the second half is one where they just shut you out. They just overwhelm you, outsmart you, outplay you. They're more physical getting guys to the ball. They seem to be playing the right coverage in all instances. Again, this is first half film that you're seeing. I'm talking about second half situations that really just run in line with how they played in the AFC playoffs last year. Smart defensive coordinator, smart team, physical. I mean, you see them knocking the crap out of Kenny Pickett right there on the touchdown pass. For the standard that I think the Bengals want to get to, for the level they want to get to win 3 playoff games in the AFC again and get to the Super Bowl and win it, even in this 7-game win streak, I don't see them playing at that level for 4 quarters. That's what I'm saying. Now, if you want to be a smartass or someone who says, well, it's not going to matter against the Ravens in Week 18, if you're just tuning in, when I previewed this earlier, my intro was like 6 minutes. It was a lot too long probably, so my apologies. I'm previewing both games. I'm talking about both games. And the fact that multiple guys were able to make plays for the Steelers offense in the first half bodes well for, I'm not just talking necessarily about the Ravens in the next 2 games. I'm talking about the Chiefs or the Bills or whoever, Chargers, the Bengals end up playing. It certainly looks like they're going to play the Ravens 2 weeks in a row in Cincinnati. So that is my little rundown of the Steelers game. Now, forgive me if there's just too much Bengals film here. The next set will be Ravens film. But I'm going over 4 games in this 7-game win streak where I'm talking to you about some inconsistency in the defense in the first half or the second half. Now, this Chiefs game is different. You may say, hey, well, hold on, Coach. The Bengals won 27-24. Mahomes only had like 225 yards passing. He was 16 of 27. Chiefs only had 350 total. So what are you talking about here, Coach? Let me show you. The Bengals did have 430 yards compared to 350 for the Chiefs. So the Bengals defense played great. Don't get me wrong. For the the entirety of the course of the game, however, the Chiefs had some situations where I think they really took advantage of the Bengals. I'm going to let the film run and just talk through this game a little bit. Bengals were up 14-3 early in the second quarter. Okay, kind of in control at home. Teams then exchanged punts in the second quarter. Here's the Chiefs' next 4 possessions. Again, they were down 14-3, about a little more than midway in the second quarter. The Chiefs' next 4 possessions, bridging the second quarter to the middle third. They go 4 possessions, 31, and one of these, by the way, was the end of the half, where I think the end of the half is 2 plays for like 30 yards or something, and then it's end of half. Maybe memory doesn't serve there, but it's 4 possessions, 31 plays, 250 yards, 8.1 yards per play. The Chiefs eventually took a 24-17 lead on like a 3-yard run, I think on a 4th down by Mahomes near the end of the third quarter. Maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes left in the third quarter, maybe a little later than that. So what's my point? You're not getting this clear delineation for the Bengals defense in this game of allowing points in the first half. Think back to the AFC Championship game last year. The Chiefs offense scorched the Bengals in the first half. They did. and then wasted a field goal opportunity by going for it with no timeouts to end the half. They could have had 24 points as it were. They ended up with 21, I believe. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. But the point is, last year it was very clear the pattern that the Bengals had in the AFC playoffs, and that pattern held true in the AFC Championship game. They were able to shut down Pat Mahomes in the third and fourth quarter and the overtime. And a lot of it was three-man rushes. I'm going to continue to mention that because that's something that I've gotten some negative feedback for stating, that three-man rushes can work in the NFL. What worked against Pat Mahomes in the third and fourth quarter last year. This game didn't follow that pattern. The Chiefs kind of figured things out a little bit second quarter to mid-late third, and got a lot of things going. Again, 8.1 yards per play on those 4 possessions in a row. Now, the Bengals offense didn't get stopped in the second half, so it didn't end up mattering in terms of the overall result, all right? But it's interesting to me that their defense didn't just take over in the second half. There were plays made, and again, it's multiple guys making the plays. And I think this is the fourth down. Yeah, scramble. Kind of controversial with Mahomes jumping up there. You get the end zone angle too, holding the ball over the cross. We presume that it was reviewed. I don't know that for sure, to be honest with you. A lot of these games I don't watch live. I watch the all 22 when I can. Certainly looks like to me he gets the ball over the cross of the goal line there, making the fumble, the thereafter fumble, null and void. Great effort by the Bengals defense. Look, then in the second half, it's not like, again, the Bengals offense didn't get stopped. They closed out the game with a 10-yard drive. Kelsey ends up with this big fumble here on a big gain, or strip, I guess I should say, by Pratt. I think it's Pratt. Extremely underrated player by the Bengals. And then the Chiefs miss a field goal with like 3:20, 3:30 left in the game, where they were down by 3. So it's not like the Chiefs necessarily got stopped either in the second half. That's my point. You had 4 possessions in a row where they generate 8.1 yards per play. Then this Kelsey fumble. And then the next time they get the ball, they go down and they miss a field goal with 3:20 left in the game. So it's not like necessarily the Chiefs. It was a 55-yarder, so it's not like it's a gimme. It was an opportunity to tie the game. Bengals win 27-24, third win in a row over the Chiefs. So it's a great win. I'm not saying that it's not a great win for them. It is. They're a great team, for real. I know Ravens fans don't like hearing that. Point being, it's not as clear here that they were able to be a shutdown defense for an entire half. In fact, I would offer to you they were really only a shutdown defense for the first probably 17, 18 minutes of the game, something like that. All right, week 15 at Tampa Bay. Now, this one's another patented formula that fits for their defense and how they play. Bucks go up 17-0 with a minute and 20 or a minute and 30 left in the second quarter, something like that. 17-0. I think it's a touchdown pass to Chris Godwin. The minute and 30 left. Puts them up 17-0 late in the second quarter. Bengals offense had been struggling. They were able to get a field goal at the end of the half to close to 17-3, I believe. Now, one thing that should be brought up, hopefully in the chat, is, Coach, you're talking about both games. Okay, fine. So Lamar may play in the wild card game. Okay, fine. How many of these types of plays that we're seeing, these positive yards, big plays, are things that can be replicated, by the Ravens? Because, we don't have some of the guys that we need. We don't have Bateman. Clearly, big loss. I mean, Bateman would be a huge asset to this offense because of the talent level that he has. I think we can make plays like that when we get these coverages against the Bengals. By the way, there was a really bad penalty called on Chris Godwin there. They called it a crackback block or whatever. It was BS. But in any case, I think this week 18, if Anthony Brown plays quarterback and we rest certain guys, of course we're going to be somewhat limited, and you may get 4 quarters of defensive dominance by the Bengals. Here's what I would say to you. If the Ravens and Bengals play 2 games in a row, so we're talking about 8 quarters, and Lamar plays the final 4 quarters, and we rest guys, presumably other guys, in Week 18, the first 4 quarters that we play them, you don't think it's possible that the Ravens can have 2 good offensive quarters against this team? I do. I absolutely think they can. in the wild card game. I wouldn't want to waste the concepts that we think, like that one right there, by the way, is another deep over concept. I wouldn't want to waste the concepts that we think can, quote, work. I don't think this Bengals defense is there to be had for 24 points consistently by this Ravens offense as it stands right now. Can the Ravens get to, in a playoff situation, can the Ravens get to 21 organically, meaning 3 touchdowns somehow organically? It'd be tough to do. What, could they get to 22, 24, 25, 26 non-organically, meaning turnovers, special teams plays, a busted play? Absolutely, they could. A big play by Lamar Jackson? Come on, that's what he does, right? All right, so back to the gameplay here that we're talking about. Again, this is all plays. This is all plays of the Bucs going up 17-0. I'm intentionally showing good plays here early in the game, letting you know that these things are possible. Can the Ravens replicate any of this Week 18? Because I don't want to waste your time. Well, throwing to the running backs, throwing to multiple receivers, yeah, they can. Can the Ravens walk in and run the ball down the Bengals' throat? No. Now, the strategy that the Ravens coaches choose will probably be to run the ball and shorten the game. Look, the Bengals were able to force, I think, 3 turnovers in this second half when they just really overwhelmed the Bucs. The Bucs kind of fell apart in somewhat similar fashion they did against the Ravens. Maybe they're an older team, whatever the situation may be. I don't know why that play was included in there. Sorry, but the Bengals forced 3 turnovers. You saw the interception. There was a fumble. There was also another interception here by Pratt. I had his number wrong earlier, I think, and they just blew away the Bucs. The Bucs ended up getting a late field goal to make it look like a late touchdown to make it 34-23. Really the patented Bengals defensive effort. And then this one against the Patriots in Week 16 was the opposite. And look, this was the last full game that the Bengals have played because of the tragedy with Damar Hamlin, who has, thankfully, by the grace of God, he's made an incredible recovery in the last 5 days and been able to speak to his team and hold his family's hand, which is just an unbelievable feel-good story now that he's on the road to recovery, hopefully, a full recovery, hopefully. But the Bengals' offense and defense, this game, the last full game that they played, was utterly dominant in the first half. Completely dominated the Patriots in Week 16 to open half. Took a 22-0 lead into halftime. And I'm sure you're just like me. You saw the score. Same play twice there. I'm not sure why. You saw the score and you were like, okay, well, Ravens we got to get the win here because that one's over at 22-0. Check out the stats here for the first half. This is what the Bengals did in Foxborough. 5 possessions for the Patriots offense. 17 plays, 70 yards in the first half. Wow. I mean, a little over 4 yards per play. Unbelievable defensive effort by the Bengals. And then the Patriots made adjustments. They did some things differently. I really had an opportunity to win this game, even though if you look at the team stats for the game, I think the Bengals had 28 first downs, and I believe the Patriots had 18, something like that. So there's a huge disparity in some of that stuff, but Burrow threw two interceptions, and I think they also had a fumble, they being the Bengals, a fumble turnover. And look, the Bengals defense opened the third quarter with 2 stops. And then this pick 6 by Marcus Jones closed the deficit for the Patriots to 22-6. The Bengals are still in control here. It's 22-6. And then they fell apart in the fourth quarter. Like, we should be familiar with that as Ravens fans. If there's Bengals fans, listening and reject or don't like that characterization, I'm sorry. It's just a fact. The Patriots scored twice in the fourth quarter. One of the drives bridged the third quarter to the fourth quarter. Bourne just made a ton of plays for the Patriots. And then a third drive ends in a fumble by, I think, Ramondre Stevenson, I believe. That really was a situation where they should have won the game. Well, had an opportunity to win the game in the final minute. Like I said, Bourne made a ton of plays for them. It was a game, where he had a huge impact. Bengals defense fell apart. 2 touchdown passes from Mac Jones. And then a very fortunate fumble by Ramondre Stevenson. allows the Bengals to, get out of there with a 22-18 lead. Very fortunate and so interesting to me because it was the reverse of what they normally do. They were shut down in the first half. And some of these, that touchdown and then the other one that you're going to see is a little bit anomalous. I mean, you saw that one. Very weird situation in the back of the end zone. The defender has his back turned. Receiver's able to catch it over the top of his head with, not an extremely clear line of sight. And this next touchdown, I think, is tipped from one receiver to the other. Bengals are certainly playing a soft coverage here because it's 3rd and 30. But 3rd and 30, how many times do you see guys end up being as open as multiple guys are here? I mean, there's a guy wide open there who, that's not where the ball was thrown at this second. Mac Jones is trying to get away from some pressure, figure out where to throw the football. But there were guys open in multiple locations. The guy he threw it to was open, and then it gets tipped, to, I think, Jacoby Myers. Patriots have the ball with less than a minute left. I think 55 seconds left. 1st and goal from the 5. And the Bengals do a great job of forcing the fumble, getting the turnover. So, awesome win for them. They're able to close this thing out. And I think it was a 10-play drive to finish the game. I could be wrong there and run the clock out. But the overall point for me is they're not playing a completely dominant half here. It's not like, they're shutting in the second half. It's not like they're shutting the Patriots offense down in the second half. The Patriots coaches were the ones who made adjustments. The Patriots coaches were the ones who put their players in position to succeed. Now, as a Ravens fan, that probably doesn't sound encouraging because when has our offense made adjustments in the second half? I mean, you kind of have to go back to our game against the Patriots to maybe the Bucs, I guess, to see, where our offense played better in the second half than we did in the first half. Those are the two that come to mind to me. Certainly wasn't the Giants game. Certainly wasn't the Jets game, even dating back to week 1. I don't know what other games you would characterize where the Ravens players and coaches, came out in the second half and played better offensively than they did in the first half. So where does it bring the Ravens team in week 18? We're averaging just under 12 points per game in the last 5 weeks. With Lamar Jackson and possibly even, Tyler Huntley, who knows what his deal is with his shoulder, I think. You should expect at least one dominant half from the Bengals defense, at least. Based upon the film I just showed you and their history in the last 2 years, under Lou, and I can never say his last name, I feel so bad, Lou Anamorio, I think, because he's a great defensive coordinator, great coach. But you should expect at least one dominant half from this Bengals defense in Week 18, at least one, meaning at least 2 quarters. Are you going to get 3 quarters? If you get 3 quarters of dominance, this game's a blowout. If you get 2 quarters of outright dominance, can the Ravens hang around and shorten the game with Anthony Brown playing? I mean, maybe, but that seems far-fetched. And obviously, that's why the betting line has moved a lot. I think it's moved almost 3 points in the last 24 hours. If you get a patented second half shut down by the Bengals in the second half, you would think that with the offensive firepower they have, no matter what type of lead the Ravens have in the second half, if they did this week, that the Bengals are going to be able to come back and win, clearly. It looks like the Bengals are going to play all of their guys, and the Ravens would presumably sit some guys, Huntley being one of them, and who knows about some of our veterans. The next part of this preview, to be honest with you, is going to focus on the Ravens' defense against the Bengals in Week 5, and we're going to look at film from that game, and I'm going to talk about how I'm not sure how much reliability there is in the Ravens just lining up in various looks, and then whatever look we're in, just playing Tampa 2 out of it, because that's basically what they did. They showed a lot of looks to Joe Burrow and then played a Tampa 2 out of it from various personnel designations. And I'm not sure that the Ravens can do that all game and get away with it. Simultaneous to that, teams are still playing the Tampa 2 against the Bengals to some good effect. So let's check out the film from the Ravens Week 5 win over the Bengals. Look, I'm going to look at the coverages that the Ravens played, and I'm going to caution Ravens fans and Bengals fans too that the coverages the Ravens played are not necessarily applicable 100% across the board. in terms of being as effective in Week 18 as they were in Week 5 at home in the 1917 win that the Ravens had. Look, the Bengals saw a lot of cover 2, 2 high safety looks, Tampa 2. Sometimes people call it cover 2, and it's really just quarters with a split field read. But the Ravens did play a lot of Tampa 2. We're going to go through probably about 20 plays here of the Bengals offense against the Ravens from Week 5. Kind of reference some things from 2021 as well. One thing that I always think about with these spread teams, when I say spread teams, I mean teams that are in the shotgun and teams that have 2-by-2 set, is where's the back? Where's the running back? And in this case, the back is to the boundary. The back and the tight end are to the boundary. And certainly Mixon and Hayden Hurst began to get more effective as the game went along. I thought the Bengals, I don't want to say figured out, but they certainly had a better plan on attacking the Ravens mid-late second quarter onward than they did early in the game. All right, so this is an example of how you play in a 2 high safety structure. You can make yourself somewhat limited to the boundary because you're really stressing the boundary side inside linebacker, which in this case is Patrick Queen. The Ravens generally do line him up to the boundary now, even with Roquan Smith there. Josh Bynes is playing in this video that you'll see. But it really stresses him because you have 3 potential receivers to the boundary, and you have the 3 potential guys to cover include the inside linebacker. To the field, you have 2 potential receivers and then 3 potential defenders, along with the 4th player being an inside linebacker. The stress on the boundary side inside linebacker is different than the stress on the field side inside linebacker. In this case, he kind of gets picked. Joe Mixon catches an easy pass, ends up being a short completion to the boundary. With the talent that the Bengals had, you'll kind of take that, right? Another play from early in the game. This is the first drive again. Now the tight end and the running back are to the field. Somewhat different threat. And you can see the Ravens have kind of tried to match it with Patrick Queen being to the field this time. One of the things the Ravens did a lot, and I'll talk about this a little later on, is make sure that they had help over the top of Jamar Chase. Kind of obvious, right? So that you're going to see Chuck Clark roll here. And what that does is it allows Marcus Peters to be a little bit more physical than he would be if he did not have help over the top on this 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4. And the Ravens got pressure. Calais Campbell threw Joe Burrow to the ground, so that helped out the DBs as well. All right, second drive. But already you can see that the Bengals had taken Jamar Chase and put him in jokers to the boundary, meaning put him in the backfield with Mixon. So jokers, in the terminology that I'm aware of, that I was taught, is one running back on the right and the left of the quarterback who is in the shotgun. We'll talk about Marcus Peters a little bit later, what he's signaling. But this is not an admission. This is an adjustment by the Bengals to see what the Ravens were going to do, how they were going to cover things with not the running back and the tight end into the boundary, but now Jamar Chase and the tight end into the boundary. And you can see that they've kept Marcus Williams and Marlon Humphrey, the right corner and right safety, generally when everybody's healthy, into the boundary to that right side. It's a sweep by Chase. Credit to the Bengals for trying to figure out creative ways to get him the football when the Ravens were playing a lot of Tampa 2, having a safety rolled over the top, trying to limit his effectiveness. So give them credit, even though that was a short play that didn't really work. All right, second drive, 3rd and 12. Another version of a Tampa 2 disguised. Marcus Williams is lined up at 7 yards depth from the line of scrimmage. And he's going to roll to be in the middle of the field. He's running the pipe, basically. So you have your half-field safety here, and then Marcus Williams is basically the Mike linebacker. At this point, Kyle Hamilton wasn't playing nearly as much as he is now, especially in the Ravens' nickel sets. But in any case, they used Pepe Williams, as a half-field defender because Hamilton didn't play as much. Chuck Clark, half-field defender. And like I said, Marcus Williams is running the pipe. And Burrow is going to get pressure from JPP, who gets held horribly, and it's not called. So Burrow is unable to work back down here, underneath. There was an article on ESPN about Burrow throwing checkdowns, and I understand, Burrow and other Bengals players co-signed it. But look, Burrow is a guy who will throw to the open receiver regardless. So I understand the article, and I'm not refuting anything that a Bengals player or coach said. But my point is, situations like this actually surprise me because he goes through his progressions so quick. I think he's looking for Jamar Chase on this. I think this is one where it's kind of like a dig, and he just doesn't get to Hurst enough because, like I said, JPP has defeated the right tackle, and he's clearly being held here. I'll slow it down so you can see it from behind. It's not called. I guess he's trying to hold JPP's towel since he couldn't get a hold of his waist. So it's a sack on a 3rd and 12. The Bengals, I thought, I'm not going to show a ton of plays from later on in the game where they figured things out, but this was another example of them, I feel like, trying to mitigate the Ravens' too high safety look and find some yards. This is another cover 2. QB draw on a 1st and 10. First play, I think, of the 3rd drive. This one was really confusing. I don't think you will see anything like this. I think if you accept that the Bengals did have trouble with certain too high safety looks and cover 2 looks early in the season, they are not now, in my opinion. I think they've moved past that, so that's why I want to caution Ravens fans about not relying on the fact that the defense is going to be able to just hold them to 17 points again. I think that's a little unrealistic. All right, and the very next play after that QB draw, again, you've got Jamar Chase in the backfield. Look at Patrick Queen coming over here telling Odafe Oweh, who doesn't seem to really be listening, or at least he doesn't turn his helmet. But in any case, he's telling him about that wheel that Marcus Peters was signaling earlier. Like, hey, look, there's a wheel coming into the boundary here with Chase. That's the target. We want you to get hands on him. Does Oweh hold him? Sure, he does. But still, it's a physical play by the Ravens. I don't think this is going to be the quote, one of the answers, quote, for the Bengals. I think they'll get the ball out quicker. If the Ravens play a lot of this Tampa 2, I think they'll throw underneath, force the Ravens to make tackles coming downhill. This is a 3rd and 8, the very next play. It's a cover 2, Tampa 2 disguise. And it's a flood concept, I believe. The Ravens have, simulated some pressure up the middle and then dropped out Patrick Queen. It's a great play by Marcus Peters, tackle on Hayden Hurst, who I thought really had an impactful game, especially as the game went on. So they're dropping out Queen, and they're dropping out Oweh, and then they're blitzing Stevens off the edge. The Ravens, do a lot of this stuff where they simulate pressure up the middle and then drop guys out, maybe bring somebody off the edge. But it is a Tampa 2. Here's your half-field defender. I'm not sure if you guys can see this because of the frame you got. There's what looks like that's Chuck Clark's leg that you can see. That's the other half-field defender. Patrick Queen is running the pipe, just like I talked about Marcus Williams earlier. You got your 4 underneath guys in your Tampa 2. Odafe Oweh doesn't have as much depth as the other 3, clearly because he's lined up on the line of scrimmage, and he's an outside linebacker / DN, so his drop isn't going to be as quick. Marlon Humphrey, the bottom of the screen, being real physical with the backside X receiver. I think Sample, is who it is. But in any case, Marcus Peters comes up, great tackle. He played a fantastic game. Going to move this forward a little bit. How much of this is still applicable? I don't know. I do know that the Ravens cannot play this look, in my opinion, against the Bengals. What I mean is this 5-1 look that you see here, where you have 1 inside linebacker, 3 interior D linemen, and then 2 edge players, 2 stand-ups, outside linebackers, whatever you want to call them. I call it a 5-1. Some people call it a 3-3, whatever you want to call it. The point is you've got 5 guys on the line of scrimmage and only 1 inside linebacker. I don't think the Ravens can play this look. If they attempt to, they've got to get run fits like this from Chuck Clark into the boundary. Again, you got tight end running back into the boundary. He gets a run read and fills right now. And it only ends up being like a 3-yard gain, maybe a 4-yard gain. He becomes essentially another inside linebacker because of his read, because he sees a base block here by the tight end, and they're basing up with the right tackle. So he knows he's going to come downhill right now and fill inside. This is dangerous if you ask me, and this is the reason why I say that I'm not sure that they can play this look a ton. You play this look a lot, and the Bengals give you play action. Same blocks here with the tackle, guard, and tight end, and then run this vertical. Now you got a safety filling, and you're one-on-one with whoever that number 1 receiver is to the boundary, and Marcus Peters or Marlon Humphrey or whoever the outside corner is for the Ravens in that situation. That's why I'm saying I'm not sure that they can play this look. I think it's a little too dangerous. But, some of the things that they've done this year with Mike McDonald I haven't been a big fan of, and they've worked at times, and at times they have not. Another example of the 5-1 here. Chuck Clark is now rolled up into the boundary, so certainly looks like it's going to be man. It's not. It's another disguised cover 2. And the Ravens are dropping out both outside linebackers, in this case, Harrison and Oweh, and then they're blitzing Josh Bynes, I think, through the A-gap to the boundary side. So it looks like it's going to be man, pre-snap, and then the Ravens are again bailing to a cover 2. If the Ravens give these consistent looks to the Bengals, meaning they play cover 2 so consistently, here's your half-field defender, which I think is Marcus Williams, your other half-field defender, Pepe Williams, and Chuck Clark, who I said was lined up, looking like he was going to play man on the tight end, instead dropped out to be the middle of the field, the guy who would run the pipe on a vertical, from the passing strength side. So it's just another cover 2 version or cover 2 look, disguise. Ravens did a nice job of it. I don't think they're going to be able to catch the Bengals by surprise this much. 3rd and 14, very soft coverage, obviously, and they get a great tackle by Pepe Williams. Look, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Pepe Williams played very well that game. I'm not saying that they played above their talent level, but my point is they played extremely well, and I question whether they'll be able to recreate all of that. Now, what they can recreate is the intelligence and the recognition, especially of a guy like Marcus Peters. Look, he's looking directly in the backfield right now. Why? Because he sees this alignment, the tight end and the halfback on the same side in this stacked alignment that has always been a pass formation for the Bengals in the offense that, they run with Joe Burrow, at least dating back to like 2020 that I recall. Great read. As soon as Joe Burrow turns to throw it, Peters is triggered. He's gone. He's coming downhill now. No hesitation. Something in his film study, something in his preparation, allowed him to be able to do that. Just an incredibly intelligent guy along with the athletic gifts that he has. All right. Hey, again, I actually showed you this one earlier. He's getting help here over the top, meaning he knows he's got safety help over the top. Chuck Clark is rolling. They're playing man backside, but you also are getting a safety, Marcus Williams, moving back here to possibly help Marlon Humphrey down here. So Humphrey and Peters played well, especially in the situations where they had help over the top. I suspect, and I know that as the game went on, Burrow started to attack quicker, away from the side, away from, wherever there was safety help, away from where Peters and Humphrey were able to be super aggressive. And those guys had a throwback night, don't get me wrong. I showed you this one earlier. Look at what Peters is doing. Now, this is earlier in the game than the wheel that I showed you where Oweh comes out of the backfield and chips Chase. Really, he held him, let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. This is earlier in the game. So, again, the intelligence, the awareness of Peters, that's what he's signaling, is that it's going to be a wheel. Now, this is not. This is actually the sweep that I showed you earlier. I showed it to you twice just to illustrate how prepared Peters was, how locked in he was, along with Marlon Humphrey and others. 3rd and 8, Peters is going to get a tackle on Hayden Hurst. Out here in the flats, really a lot of space to operate for Hurst. I mean, you do have an inside-out linebacker, Harrison, running here, but Peters, is not known as a great tackler. Certainly did his job here on this play. I would caution Ravens fans into expecting the Ravens defense to just get overwhelmed. I would also caution you to expect that the Ravens are going to hold them to under 20 points. I think that the Bengals are going to take more shots like this one, in my opinion, because those things have been successful against the Ravens. Now, this is one of the plays where Marcus Peters is still competing until after the whistle, or to the whistle, I should say. There's been situations this year where he has stopped competing like now, and the receiver comes down with it in bounds, whereas if he had continued to push or make contact like he did here, he could have pushed the receiver out of bounds, because the rules are different now than they were 10, 12 years ago in terms of whether the receiver would have come back down in bounds. Now it's just whether you did or not, and the defenders are allowed to push you. One of the complaints about Marcus Peters this year has been that he occasionally has stopped competing. All right, Kyle Hamilton's actually on the field here. We're going to start to talk about Marlon Humphrey and how physical he was. You got the tight end and the running back into the boundary like I talked about. Tight end releasing into the flats. Chase running a vertical. So Humphrey releases that to the safety. I do think that the Ravens are going to do everything they can do to limit Jamar Chase. You can't blame them, right, because of how he scorched them in 2021. Great tackle by Marlon, and he's capable of doing these things repeatedly, consistently. He's a great tackler. He's very physical. When he comes forward against a run or against a short pass like that, he's certainly capable of making big plays. Defensive pass interference called on Marcus Peters. I do think that he set a physical tone with Jamar Chase. They didn't call the first hold. They actually called the trip here, which I don't know how you feel about it. I thought it was a little weak call, but in any case, they did call it there, and Peters is certainly being very physical. He made contact with Chase early in the game in his face mask right after the snap because he was playing like a cover 2 corner. He also tackled him one time. So they had a physical matchup. I think Jamar Chase is going to come out with something to prove, and I think the Bengals are going to look to throw the ball downfield. These back shoulder fades, I think, will be options for them, regardless of whether the Ravens are playing cover 2 or whatever, to be honest with you. A great play by Pepe Williams on a screen here to Jamar Chase. The Ravens were locked in to where he was, whether he was in the slot, whether he was in the backfield, whether he was lined up as the number 1. Quick screen out here. Tackle can't get to Pepe, or actually gets his hands on him, but Pepe's reaction was so quick that he was still able to get there and finish it off for a tackle for loss. Who knows actually, who's even going to play in the game, depending on the Ravens, health with Lamar. Marcus Peters may not even play. I know he returned to practice this week. Who knows what the status of the the actual division championship is. I'm not really here to speculate on those things, to be honest with you. I'm just showing you some of the things the Ravens did, if you did not recall, and some of the matchups that I think were important in that Week 5 game, and are still going to be important here. Marlon did a great job, even when he was left one-on-one against Chase. Now, Chase did catch some balls against him, don't get me wrong, but Marlon was very physical, clearly, got hands-on downfield here, impedes the route by Jamar Chase. But Jamar Chase in that back shoulder fade is difficult for everyone to defend. And him and Joe Burrow have a great connection with it. He got the running back into the boundary, chipping and then releasing. So they've really isolated Marlon here. You got Chuck Clark into the box, or into the boundary, I should say, lined up like he's going to guard the running back. So you clearly have man here. I think Geno Stone is on for the Ravens with Kyle Hamilton, because Marcus Williams is out. He's already been injured at this point. Remember, I think he broke his wrist. But it's a great throw by Burrow. Great catch. Anytime there's no safety anywhere between the top of the numbers and, a little bit outside the hash, this is a possibility for the Bengals to attack with T. Higgins, with Jamar Chase. One of their other receivers is also pretty big and I think very, very capable. I'm not talking about Boyd. But this is the danger of not playing the Tampa 2, of not playing some kind of coverage where you have a safety who can react horizontally, laterally to the sideline, and you have a corner who's got outside leverage to be able to stop something like this. Whenever you're playing man against this Bengals team, or even cover 3, it's a danger that the back shoulder fade stuff, he can just throw it up. And it's not to say he's just throwing it up and there's no rhyme nor reason to it. It's strategic. It's coordinated. It's practiced between him and the receiver. They read it perfect. They read it excellent. And Burrow delivers the ball where he needs to. If the Ravens were to somehow figure out a way to hold this Bengals team to 20 points again or less, that would be a tremendous accomplishment, especially because of how limited the offense has been recently. Think about the game last week against the Steelers where the Ravens defense really, wore down. I personally didn't think they played well throughout the entire game, but they wore down because the offense's absolute ineptitude in the second half, where the Ravens offense at least was able to generate a touchdown in the first half, even get a field goal, 2 field goals along with that, I just think that it would be a tremendous accomplishment for the Ravens to come out and somehow figure out a way to limit this team. In order for them to do that, their DB core is going to have to play fantastic. They're going to have to be able to play multiple coverages and not be as simplistic as they were in the Week 5 matchup. Hopefully I was able to present to you. This is basically film from the first 5 or 6 possessions, I believe, with a couple of plays from the 7th possession when the Bengals kind of started to figure things out and utilize Hayden Hurst, run the ball with Joe Mixon. Certainly going to be a big loss for them not having La'el Collins at right tackle, but I think the Ravens got their own personnel issues that are a little bit more significant. Let me know what you guys think of this video. I'll have multiple previews coming out, prior to the 1 o'clock game on Sunday. It'll be a tremendous matchup between 2 AFC North teams that have already qualified for the playoffs, and who knows what their strategy will be. Let me know what you think of the video, what you think the Ravens and Bengals strategy will be in terms of the players that they actually deploy and allow to dress and play in the game on Sunday. All right, so this third part of the preview is going to focus on the Bengals offense and some of you'll see some similar coverages to what we just talked about that the Ravens played, that a lot of teams played early in the season against the Bengals that did clearly give them trouble. Someone in my Discord, I forget who it was, shared a statistic about how efficient Joe Burrow has been against the Tampa 2 since Week 5, and that's fine. I guess what they meant was Week 6 onward, because he certainly wasn't efficient against the Ravens' different versions of Tampa 2. It worked. What the Ravens wanted to do, force short completions or incompletions, shorten the game. take away some of the vertical threats of the Bengals offense. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who I know didn't play the whole game there, but Rashad Bateman, didn't either. Or Marcus Williams didn't either, on defense. So it kind of balanced out. Thankfully, both of those guys are back healthy. You're going to see some interesting things from this. I'm going to show you a film generally of the first 3 possessions, maybe the first 4 of the Bengals game against the Patriots that I spent so much time talking about earlier, where the Bengals jumped out to a 22-0 lead and then held on to win 22-18. Patriots had a great opportunity in the final minute to win that game, first and goal from the 5, and they fumble. Ramondre Stevenson turns the ball over, and the Bengals get out of New England with a win. All right, so let's look at some of the film from the Bengals win over the Patriots, the last full game that they've played and won. I love this play. I don't love that the Bengals are running it. I mean, this puts a lot of stress on boundary side, inside linebacker. It's an RPO play. You've got so many elements to this. You can have a vertical by number 1, a post, even a slant. And then you've got the tight end running out into the flats, the back crossing the quarterback's face. So it looks like it could be an RPO. It could be a pre-snap RPO. He could get there and make the decision and make some call. These guys are close enough because they're into the boundary. When I say these guys, I mean, everyone here is close enough because they're into the boundary. There could be a call made where he says what the play is going to be. It could be a post-snap read, but in any case, it puts a lot of stress on this boundary side inside linebacker. And then also you see this edge defender, Wise, is unblocked. You've got the tight end run out in the flats. T. Higgins could run a stop route. He could run a snag, a slant, a post, whatever he wants to run. It's a short route, which typically is what tells me that this is an actual RPO. They were rolling on this first drive, and you'll see. We're going to run through 5 plays here, I think. Throwing to the backs a lot more, and that was a big article that I saw on ESPN last week, and I understand that. I understand that it's a reality. The players and coaches for the Bengals talked about it, but this is what they really are scary about. Throwing to Joe Mixon, he's got a lot of catches, and so does Perine. They're both really good players. Throwing to the tight ends, they've got some new guys. Don't get me wrong, that makes them more efficient. But this right here is, to me, what is the defining element, which you have to take away if you're going to defend them well. If you're going to hold the Golden State Warriors down, you got to limit Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You got to limit them, in terms of their three-point shooting, in terms of their big plays. In my opinion, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, that's who they are. They're the Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in one direct, or the Steph Curry and Klay Thompson of this team. They make plays. What do they also do? They also provide a lot of gravity. Yes, Burrow's throwing to the running backs a lot. I would not call this a check down. I would call this a formation with Higgins and Chase being used as the primary read, and then the third read off of this is the running back in the flats, using the gravity of those two guys, which is just smart. It's just smart by their coaches, just smart by Burrow to recognize that not going to dilly-dally around, get back here and look for anything else. It's a two-man route in terms of the stand-up receivers, and then the running back out into the flats. This is a designed play to use the gravity of Higgins and Chase and then get the ball to Mixon out in the flats. It's just super, super smart and super scary because it shows you they understand the coverages they're going to get. All right, this is another scary situation that, to be honest with you, Marcus Peters jumped this in the Ravens win against the Bengals. But the Bengals have tightened this up a little bit. Now they have a stacked twin alignment. When they were running this earlier in the season, this number 2 receiver, which I think is Boyd, he was like, his feet were here. Okay? So he wasn't so close to Chase. And what happened was Marcus Peters was playing off corner, but he was looking right in at Burrow. And as soon as the back was on the same side, I'm putting those lines there or those dots there for the running back's feet. As soon as the back was on the same side, Marcus Peters jumped this immediately when Joe Burrow opened to this side, when Joe Burrow opened to the same side as Jamar Chase. Why? Because Jamar Chase is like a running back. What I mean by that is out here in space from the top of the numbers down, or even like the actual outer third of the field, when he gets the ball, he is like a running back. That's not an insult. That's a compliment. Am I saying he could line up here and play running back and run the ball in between here? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when he gets the ball here on a hitch and he can operate in this space against DBs, safeties, maybe an outside linebacker who's apexed out, a nickel defender. He's like a running back. He can break tackles. Look at some of the plays he's made against the Chiefs the last 2 years. So this play and the first play that I showed you are setup plays to either hand it off or throw the hitch out here to Chase. And the Ravens play in a Tampa 2, in this case, puts them in a good situation to at least defend the hitch, to at least have a corner out there. But the Bengals are going to force you to put 3 out there over 2. So basically you're subtracting 1 from the run fit. Touchdown on a second down. Beautiful concept, if you ask me. T. Higgins on the little out. Not nearly pushing off as much as some people thought. I remember hearing people talk about this. There is not that much of a push off here at all. The defender is playing this, honestly, pretty soft. And the safety to that side isn't really helping out the corner, but the corner gives him there's way too much outside leverage here. But when you have this kind of height and this kind of anticipation between Burrow and Higgins, they've done a lot of work together, things like this happen. First drive made it look incredibly easy. Second drive isn't very much different, to be honest with you. Third drive, I think the Bengals get a field goal. Huge, get out to a huge lead. Some of these scores that I have seen recently from them, the run game's been very inconsistent. One game, Perrine was the leading rusher with 24 yards, but I think they're, quote, replacing some of the run game with plays like this one, the RPO I showed you on the first play, and then the play where they had the stacked twins down to the bottom side of the screen with Chase and Boyd, where they also handed it off to Mixon. This is very similar to that. You're getting Chase in this return motion. So he came from this side, motion into the backfield, and then kicks back up to the top side of the screen. The defense is right, the offense is left. He's essentially creating the stacked twins with this receiver here again, on the same side as the back, so you're getting an RPO. In my opinion, these are setup plays. Force the defense to use 1, 2, 3 players to account for 2 offensive players, and then add one of their own in the run game by pulling, in this case, pulling a lineman from one side to the other. But even though it sounds like a great operation in terms of the math, the quarterback still counts as one. So you can subtract him from that as well. They're using 3, the quarterback and the 2 receivers, to get 3 out of the box. The 2 defenders lined up out wide, and the safety who looks like he's going to play some version of Tampa 2. Because let's be honest, most of the time, when the teams are lining up with too high safety look against the Bengals, it's because they're going to play Tampa 2 or some variation. I shouldn't say most of the time, a large percentage of the time. Again, this is the second drive after the Bengals went right downfield and scored. They had some complimentary players make plays, to be honest with you. Guys, make plays downfield. And this has been Irwin. I forget the other guy's name. Guys that were not necessarily a big part of the offense earlier in the season. Perrine that made plays last year. He had a screen for a touchdown against the Chiefs. Really kind of broke their heart. This is one people talked about, Burrow scrambling, putting his foot up. I don't see anything wrong with what he's doing at all. This stunt has been run a lot against the Bengals. D-tackle upfield, and then the edge defender inside. It's been run a lot from the defense's right, the Bengals left. I'm not sure why. You do get Judon, coming downhill on this. Another time he basically runs over the left guard. A third time they ran that stunt, I think the left guard got called for a hold. So there's got to be a reason why teams are running it. I just haven't necessarily figured it out yet. Same alignment that you had earlier, except to the opposite side of the field. The willingness to throw to the running back is real. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't discounting it earlier. So the same alignment you had earlier, the first play that I showed you, where you basically had the number 1 receiver, I think it was Higgins on that play, running a snag, the tight end running it out, and then the back cross and face. Look at where the routes end up here at the end of the play. It's the same thing. It's pretty much the same thing, right? You're just talking about 3 receivers, in this case the running back, and 2 guys running short routes, running a space concept. I would call a space concept 3 short routes that attack horizontally to one side of the field. They're doing this, in my opinion, because they're trying to attack the Tampa 2, trying to throw it underneath and force the defenders to come up so that then later they can use a complementary play to throw over the top. It's not like they're not throwing downfield, because sometimes Burrow will see the Tampa 2, see the matchup he's got, and he'll still throw it down the left side or down the outside of the field because he understands the matchup and the advantage he's got with guys like Higgins and Chase lined up out wide. In this case, I think they had a pretty good idea they were getting Tampa 2, and they're just running a space concept, possibly having this guy available, obviously, on the hash. Burrow goes to the running back. I mean, you can't blame him. Mixon is a guy that he trusts. I would too. He's a pretty good player. Perrine in the backfield, not an RPO formation, if you ask me. Great catch by Higgins on a 2nd and long. When I say not an RPO formation, if you want to understand why I'm saying that. Now, for some teams, this is. The number 2 receiver will run a slant, and the running back will cross face. Quarterback will read this defender here and decide whether to give to the running back or keep and throw the slant. We just call it a strike, whatever it was. The Bengals don't necessarily do that. They don't seem to run the RPO out of a widened twins alignment. If they were going to run the RPO and you want to try to predict it in your brain and then tell me, if I'm right or wrong in the game, if they want to run the RPO, then this running back will be on the other side because he's got the tighter alignment so they can run the shoot route out into the flats and the snag route by number 1. But I could be wrong. Let me know if you see a different play during the game on Sunday. Still on the second drive, you can see that it's 6-0. They've had trouble missing extra points. I don't know what it is. I don't know how many times they've done it, but it's often. All right, how do you deal with this Tampa 2 sometimes? In this part of the field, well, you run 2 verticals. They got Chase outside the hash, or outside the numbers, and they got a guy between the hash and the numbers, so they're threatening this safety here with 2 verticals that he's got to defend. This guy's got to carry this vertical, obviously, because there's no way for one safety to defend these 2 routes. And Burrow makes a quick decision, excellent making quick decisions, throws it to the inside here by the Patriots logo. Great catch, through contact, awesome stuff. So it's not like they can't attack Tampa 2, don't get me wrong. And then on the 3rd possession, I think you'll see one that he throws up the left sideline that's nearly a touchdown again. I think that's Irwin, 16, talented guy that they've used a lot. So I haven't seen Hayden Hurst. I don't know if he's hurt. All right, switching to a cover 3 now. So you guys can see it. Here's your 4 underneath droppers. Here's your 3 deep defenders. If you're going to play a cover 3, you got to be a little bit better than this guy is here. Now, he's a corner. I think he's an outside corner, yeah. So it's a little different. We used to call this cloud cover 3, meaning you're lining up with a 2 high safety look, and then one safety is taking the deep thirds, another safety's taking middle thirds, the backside corner is taking the thirds on the top side of the field, the other side, where we're starting from, where I started talking about, this guy from. And then this corner is going to sit in the flats. That's cloud. That's what, from what I know, is cloud cover 3. All right, the opposite would be, let's say we do it this way. Bail to cover 3, roll to middle third, and then he takes the third up there. And then this safety was to sky down. This is still cover 3, but it would just be sky under the old 50 terminology that I know. Sky meaning safety, S. Cloud meaning corner, C. You got to be able to cover the flats better than this when you're playing cover 3. He carries Higgins, so there might be some read there between him and the safety, but I don't think so. Everybody else looks like a clean cover 3 delineation. Point being, most of these teams, Ravens included, are going to play safer coverages against the Bengals. I'm not sure you can go in there with the Wink Martindale mindset and say, I'm going to go ahead and place a lot of man free. If you're going to play man, I think it's generally going to be 2-man, and then you bring the element of Burrow scrambling into it. They're a pain in the butt to defend for anybody. This was called a penalty on that safety. I have no idea why. Maybe I'm thinking of a different play. You can see the willingness to run the ball. Are they more balanced since we've seen them in week 5? I don't know, man. They once they, quote, figured out what the Ravens were doing, maybe the 3rd, 4th, 5th possession, I felt like they made a much more concerted effort to run the ball, to use Hayden Hurst and Mixon into the boundary. Another cover two. Tampa two safeties. There's your Mike. Chase taking an outside release. And look, Burrow already knows where he's going with the football. Watch his helmet. I think he looked to this downside of the field first. Look down here. I don't know if that's just a look off or what. Maybe he's just confirming coverage. And maybe there's some player that confirms the coverage for him against the Patriots. Maybe he saw some film. But in any case, he comes back quick to Jamar Chase up top. So there's times where they're conservative. There's times where Burrow makes a decision, sees something, recognizes it, boom, going to challenge you downfield. My contention is that's generally going to be cover three, man free, situations like that. Great catch along the sideline. I think that's Chase down there. You would think they'd get in the end zone from here after that 3rd and long conversion down inside the 2, but they do not. I think this one puts them up 17-0, something like that. Maybe it was 16-0, I'm not sure. But they eventually go up 22-0 in this game. Almost wasted it. Obvious hold here on the touchdown run by Mixon. Brings things back. I feel like they've been more inconsistent along the offensive line than I was led to believe by a lot of people that I follow who follow me on Twitter. Of course, La'el Collins being out is a huge loss. He had been playing, I think, a whole lot better as the season went on. Not that he was playing bad in the beginning, but at whatever his level of play was in the beginning of the season, I think things really got better for him week 6 onward, somewhere around there. Look at how willing Burrow is to throw. This is Mixon versus a linebacker. You got Chase in here. It's not like Chase is open. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he trusts Mixon a lot in the pass game, and Mixon made a lot of plays this year. It's a dangerous game for the Ravens in Week 18 with the mentality and status of our fan base right now, with how poor the offense has played, Lamar missing so much time, the contract situation, all of those factors. A blowout loss on the road to the Bengals, I feel like would break a lot of people mentally. You have to understand that if the Ravens choose to start Anthony Brown and choose to sit defensive starters, veterans, then things could get ugly. It would be very similar to the game in Cincinnati last year, late in the season, right, where we started Josh Johnson, played a lot of soft coverages, still got exposed by multiple coverages that the Bengals pretty much knew were coming because Wink Martindale was so predictable. Defensively, Mike Macdonald is less predictable, but also we have run into more problems with blown coverages, misreads, late reads, slow reads, because we're so multiple. So it goes both ways. It's a gradient or a number line between Wink Martindale and Mike Macdonald. The mistakes might be different types of mistakes, but they can still lead to the same type of punishment. That is one of my fears if we sit out a lot of defensive players in this Week 18 game, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do, for real. Let me know what you think in the comment section. This preview went on a little long and had 3 parts to it. I wanted to talk about the Ravens offense, but as I'm recording this, it's almost midnight Friday night, so got to cut this one off, to be honest with you. This is serving as a preview for the wild card game and the Week 18 game, to be honest with you. You didn't tune in later and you didn't know that. I expect these two teams to play each other 2 games in a row. I expect there to be some gamesmanship possibly with a football doubleheader like that. It's not unprecedented. I seem to remember the Bills and Dolphins playing a turnaround doubleheader in the play in the early 90s, where the Dolphins blew the Bills out in the last game of the regular season with Marino. I think Marino was still there. And then the Bills, with a real injury-depleted squad, went down to Miami and won. I could be wrong there. Maybe the game was in Buffalo, but I believe it was in Miami. I believe they went down to Miami. Is that possible here? I don't know. You can sit there and say no if you want. I think the Ravens have too many competitors to get blown out in Week 18. The Lamar come back in the playoffs and then go up there and not play well in the playoffs. I just think that's the type of mentality that most or all of our players have. I really do. Offensively, how do you figure out a way to score enough points to beat this Bengals team? Well, you got to play the Tampa 2. You got to play the Tampa 2, keep everything in front. You've got to disguise it. You got to be very intelligent and smart when you're not playing the Tampa 2. And you've got to pick and choose your situations when you're going to play cover two man, because that opens up Burrow to scrambling, and he's good at it. He's timely with it. In the AFC Championship game last year against the Chiefs, he did a great job in the second half. When they would play Tampa 2 or when they would play soft coverages, Burrow did a great job of scrambling. I think he had 3 big scrambles in that second half there. I could be wrong. They certainly got a lot of weapons, a lot more weapons than we have. Their offense is certainly rolling. They've got a 7-game win streak. Looks like they should be able to sweep this doubleheader. Crazy things happen in football when you play teams 2 weeks in a row. I appreciate you guys checking this video out. Let me know if you enjoyed the preview. It certainly went on a little long. I tried to go through the 3 elements of this game that I kind of thought were important. I thought the defining characteristic of the first matchup was the Tampa 2, and then Lamar's drive, to win the game, obviously, and Justin Tucker's game-winning kick. Appreciate you guys' time. Enjoy the game Sunday. I'll also be trying to cover the Lions-Packers game Sunday night, especially if the Rams are able to beat the Seahawks, and then that becomes a game where both teams can possibly get in, Lions or Packers, NFC North Division matchup. Or NFC North Division matchup. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of the video in the comments section.